Ciccone reads, and every month I like to do a wrap up of the Scottish fiction that I have read that month, and that is what I'm going to do in this video. So this is my June reading Scottish wrap up. It's not the catchiest title, but I'm going with it. As is tradition, by this point I read 4 books by Scottish authors, and I had quite a mix of genre, which I really enjoyed. I love a bit of variety, and especially with Scottish fiction, I like reading something that's a little unexpected. So in no particular order, because I haven't written notes, I'm gonna start with Happiness is Wasted on Me by Kirkland Ciccone. This was my book club book for the Scottish book club. So we've been reading this en masse from May to June. And this book is all about Walter, who lives in Cumbernauld, and this tells the story of his life over a decade. So just from being a wee boy who's about to go to high school to being early 20s and, you know, being an adult. And he is haunted by the fact that he found a corpse in a box when he was only a wee boy, and that sort of follows him through this time. And I know that that sounds like that could be an absolutely miserable book, but it really wasn't. I really enjoyed this book, and I wasn't too sure what to expect from it. When I started reading it, I was a bit worried that it was going to go down the route of I don't want to say the classic route of, you know, miserable childhood, but that was my fear, and that didn't happen, so I'm okay with that. I was quite concerned that the book was just going to be really quite sad and depressing, but it wasn't. It was filled with quite a lot of humour, and I did enjoy that. I also found so many parts of this to be very nostalgic for me. I'm about 6 years younger than Walter in this book, but there were still so many parts that were just so relatable. I included a lot of bits with the Spice Girls, and I was a huge fan of the Spice Girls when I was in primary school as well. I loved his relationships with his friends, and sort of there were parts where it just felt so relatable to sort of high school friendship when, you know, somebody maybe leaves the group, and I just really enjoyed that. I also really enjoyed parts of his family. He had quite a large family, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and I really enjoyed their dynamic. They all sort of rallied together against their tyrannical father, and I really enjoyed that. I especially loved his relationship with his sister, Donnie. I really liked Donnie. Donnie was probably the character that I felt was the most realistic, because I'm sure I know people that are like her. I really enjoyed just the huge variety of characters that we got to meet. I get a huge amount of enjoyment out of reading books that are somewhat relatable to my own youth, and obviously my youth was quite different to Walter. I'm fortunate enough to have never found any dead bodies of humans, so I'm very lucky there, but I found his school days so relatable as a not very well off child who wasn't popular. I got a lot of relatability from Walter, and that gave me the warm and fuzzies, and that was something that it was kind of special for me. I loved experiencing his growth as a character, as a person, but also the same with his family. I really enjoyed seeing them change for the better for some and not for others. I also really enjoyed there was a little bit of a mystery element going on throughout the book too, with regards to some mysterious figures, as well as the child that he had found. All of that was just peppered with so much dark humour, which I feel is very much a Scottish thing, maybe. there were points where the book was just getting quite, I was getting a little bit sad, feeling a bit low, and then something hilarious would happen and it would just bring me back. So I really enjoyed this book, and I've not met my book club yet to talk about it, but I am so excited to discuss this book because I thought it was a gem. And I have been to Cumbernauld a few times. I would have gone there about 10 years after this book started, 4 years after it ends, I suppose. And I felt like it captured the atmosphere of Cumbernauld just perfectly, which of course it would. The author is from there, and they just captured it so perfectly that it was just such an enjoyable read, and I do think that I can see myself reading this again. Next up is The Flames of Albion by Jean Mingus. I am a huge fan of Jean's booktube channel. I also follow her on Instagram, so I got this book as soon as it was out because, I don't know, if I enjoy your content and you write a book, I'm going to want to read it. This is a fantasy book. I am a huge fan of high fantasy. It's definitely my favourite genres, mystery and fantasy. If you put the two together, I'm in heaven. And this book is in a world where there's no monarchy. And that's something that I find quite unusual in a fantasy book, because so often there is some form of monarchy, and I was really excited to read something that was a little bit different. And in this book, Atalla is charged with looking after a dragon when the egg basically chooses her to be the companion. All the while there seems to be some conspiracy theories about goings on in the realm. This also included some queer romance and dragons. Did I mention dragons? So I really enjoyed the world building. It just sounded like such a visually stunning world, not too different from Scotland, I feel. And I enjoyed the setting of the university, and I enjoyed the fact that Atalla had grown up in that university, sort of seeing the egg of the dragon, you know, every day, and then being chosen by the dragon. I found that very exciting, and I really loved the dragons. So I had the dragon that is referred to in the blurb, but there were all these other dragons that showed up, and they were so fun, and I loved the way that they interacted with each other. And I love when a book has, I don't want to say a creature sidekick, because that doesn't sound like I'm giving it the grand title that it deserves, but I can't think of any other way of describing it. Like when I read 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, Kiki was my favourite character, and she was a paper crane that had been enchanted and could talk and was just so sassy and grumpy, and I felt like I got the same in this book as well, with the baby dragon, Thea the dragon, just becoming like this entire personality that just wasn't afraid to, you know, talk back, and was just so entertaining. I really loved the dragon. So this was just a quick and easy fantasy story with dragons and with romance. So it was a fun read. If there's a sequel, I'll probably read it. Next up is The Pharmacist by Rachelle Atalla. I borrowed this book from a friend, so I do need to return this to her when I go to the post office. So Amanda, I will be sending this back to you. Don't panic if you see this video and I haven't sent it back yet. It will come back to you, I promise. This book takes place in an unknown period of time where a select few thousand of people have been chosen to live in an underground bunker, escaping from, we're not too sure, it doesn't go into detail about what. And our protagonist, Wolf, is the pharmacist, and their leader starts to show perhaps some signs of paranoia, which of course they do. You're in a bunker. I think it's normal if you're all in an underground bunker for people to not be entirely okay. So there were parts of this book that I really enjoyed and there were parts that I really didn't. So I liked the almost claustrophobic nature of the setting. I was going to say the world, but it's not the world. It's the underground bunker. So I did enjoy that. So at first I was very, very interested because I loved the setting and I loved the introduction to the setting and the whole fact that I had never thought about an underground bunker that would have, you know, doctors and pharmacists. And I thought that was really interesting. And I liked the sort of routine that Wolf had managed to build. I really enjoyed Wolf's neighbour, the bunk below her, Mrs. 4, I think. I think she was my favourite character. I know she wasn't a main character, she didn't really have that much of an arc herself, but I loved her. I would happily go on a little tour with her around the bunker. She seemed just quite sweet and quite fun. I really enjoyed her. This book included a birth scene, which I never want to read about somebody giving birth. Never. In fiction, nope. I don't want it. I don't enjoy reading about pregnancy or motherhood in fiction. It's just a topic that it doesn't interest me at all. I know that sounds quite bad, but I wasn't expecting so much of an emphasis on that subject from this book, because from the blurb I was expecting underground bunker, paranoid leader, stuff's gonna go down, and that's what I wanted, and I didn't quite get that. I felt like I got a lot more of a different story arc, which kind of left me a little bit disappointed, and I feel so bad saying that because my friend went to the signing of this book and said that the author was really nice, and now I feel really guilty saying that I didn't overly like this book. I don't want to end on a low, so I'm going to end on a high with my favourite Scottish fiction of the month, which was The Black Dog by Kevin Bridges. This was an arc that I got from NetGalley because the second I saw that Kevin Bridges had a book, a fiction novel, I had to ask for it. He is, for anybody who doesn't know who Kevin Bridges is, he is a young Glaswegian comedian. I'm calling him young. He is the same age as me, but my mum thinks I'm young, so we'll go with that. So he does a lot of story-based comedy, so things like Who's Rice and Chad Hogan with The Empty. I feel that those are probably his two most famous performances, or at least they're two of my favourites. So I was really, really looking forward to seeing how he would translate from being a story-based stand-up artist to a fiction author. And well, I've already told you that this was my favourite book, so I think it comes as no surprise that I gave this 5 stars. So The Black Dog tells the tale of Declan, who is just a young guy working in a supermarket with huge dreams of being a writer. His sort of struggles of being a working class guy wanting to make it in the world of writing, and it also includes his sort of role model, James, who was a guy from his neighbourhood who ended up being a huge star in Hollywood, but also a writer in his own right. And it really sort of merged those two stories together. And I absolutely loved Declan. I thought he was just such a little sweetheart who just wanted to write and was just so anxious about what other people thought of his work. And I found that absolutely spot on. It was just so relatable. I feel the exact same way. I found it to be just so relatable, and I loved, he had a best friend called Doof Doof, That was his nickname because of the kind of music that he used to listen to. He was a raver, which I just thought that was just so spot on, because I could imagine if there was somebody when I was growing up who listened to blaring dance music, we would call them doof doof as well. So I love that. This included quite a few moments that, similar to Happiness is Wasted on Me, where there were parts where it was quite sad, but then you got lifted right back out of it with some humour. And I really loved the relationship between James and Declan, the sort of mentor-mentee relationship, and the way that James was willing to do things that scared him a little bit in order to protect this guy that he saw a lot of his young self in. And I thought that was great. I think that the ending of this book, maybe I've not reviewed the endings of every book that I've ever read, but if I had, I'm very certain that the ending of this book would win a prize for being the most hilarious ending that I've ever read. I just thought there were so many points where this book was just absolutely hilarious, and I found myself just cackling again like a mad witch, which I tend to do a lot when a book tickles me. So I did have quite high expectations going into this book, which I try not to go in with high expectations, but they were all met. My interest was just kept. I was hooked from the beginning. I really enjoyed the main character, and I enjoyed his friendships. I enjoyed his dog, who seemed to have such a personality. I got so much enjoyment out of this book, and this was a first novel, and I have a very funny feeling that each of the books I read this month were debut novels. They were, and I didn't plan for that, so that's pretty cool. I really like that. Yeah, so that was my theme. My accidental theme was debut novels by Scottish authors, and I had a great time. I read a huge variety of books. As always, if you have read any of these books or any other Scottish fiction, do let me know in the comments. My TBR list is always growing, and I'm very much okay with that. I'm always on the lookout for book recommendations, so happy to receive any that anybody wants to give. Thanks for watching. Bye!